In 1975, Super Sentai was born in the land of the rising sun. This tokusatsu series soon became a household name and a part of Japanese pop culture. Almost 20 years later, history would repeat itself here in America, when Super Sentai would be adapted into what we now know today as Power Rangers. As Toei and Marvel's Tokusatsu alliance ended, a new era began for Toei. They still had plenty of new ideas for Super Sentai, and some of them would be applied to their next series, Dai Sentai Goggle V, also known as Goggle V. Among the things to be added would be the tradition of the title shout prior to the opening credits. In Goggle V is the first time that we ever see the color combination of red, black, blue, yellow, and pink. Sound familiar?
From times of ancient past, civilization after civilization would fall. The ones manipulating the events from the shadows would be the dark science empire, Death Dark. One man becomes aware of their existence, Dr. Hideki Hongo. Death Dark's leader, Führer Taboo, proclaims their plans for world domination and chaos. During a visit to Wolfsburg Castle in Germany, the professor is assaulted by Death Dark soldiers. He survives the encounter thanks to world-renowned explorer Kenichi Akama. He forms the Future Science Laboratory to counteract the inevitable rise of Death Dark. He then creates a specialized team to oppose them. Kenichi becomes the first member of Great Squadron Goggle V.
This team resumed the tradition of having a female member be a part of the group. She was also the youngest member at the time, being only 16 years old. In Goggle V, rather than fight a giant-sized version of the monster that the team had just defeated, a giant robot would be dispatched by Death Dark so that the fallen monster could then pilot it. This would be the first time that this scenario would be used in Sentai history, and it wouldn't be the last. An interesting little quirk about the Goggle V team was that they had rhythmic, gymnastic-based weaponry. Funnier still, though, was the fact that only Goggle Pink was a gymnast. The rest of them were just dudes, that did stuff. Before finally deciding on the name Goggle V, two other names were considered for this series, Go-Go 5 and Mirai Sentai Mirai Man. It wouldn't be until 1999 that they would use the name Go-Go 5 for their 23rd season, and ironically enough, the 24th season would be called Mirai Sentai Time Ranger. Unlike previous teams, the Goggle V team would be the first to employ the aid of understudies, that being the computer boys and girls. And yes, they are really called that. Excuse me, my brain hurts. Goggle V also managed to become quite successful internationally in countries like Italy, the Philippines, Brazil, and Indonesia. In fact, it was so popular in Indonesia that it got its very own stage show in Jakarta. The following season, KAGAKU Sentai Dynaman wouldn't have the same kind of international acclaim as Goggle V, but it would still manage to be quite memorable.
Dynaman was originally intended to be a baseball-themed Sentai. The original name was going to be Yaku Sentai V-Leaguer, and they didn't entirely scrap the baseball thematics. They kept it for certain attacks and character designs. The series had constraints that were placed on its time slot, which resulted in much better production value and improved the content of the series on a whole level.
KAGAKU Sentai Dynaman, translated Scientific Squadron Dynaman, is the story of 5 scientists, of which 4 are accomplished athletes and 1 is a cowboy. You heard correctly, a gun-slinging cowboy, not a farmhand.
And a cowboy. Yeehaw!
Yeah, the Wild West makes its way to the Far East in Kausaku Nangu. Moving on. These 5 individuals are invited by a famous scientist, Dr. Umeno, and along the way are entangled in a battle with strange creatures that drive them all into the sea. They all survive the ordeal and wash up at a kindergarten, which just so happens to be Dr. Umeno's residence. Again, moving on. The kindergarten is a front for the Umeno Invention Center, and it is explained to the heroes that they were invited due to the rise of the Jishinka Empire, which created the monsters that attacked them. Dr. Yumeno, in response to the evil empire, creates Science Squadron Dynaman, and his 5 guests are the chosen warriors to take them down.
Due to the excessive amount of explosions throughout this series, Japanese fans would sometimes refer to it as KAGAKU Sentai Dynaman. KAGAKU means gunpowder. Dynaman also has the distinction of being the team to debut in spandex-made suits.
Toru Ohida, the original Sentai series narrator, took an 8-year hiatus after Dynaman, and he didn't come back until 1992 for Kuryo Sentai Zyuranger.
Though it never saw an international release in its entirety like previous Sentai shows, perhaps Dynaman is most infamously known for its parody dub here in the US. Simply titled Dynaman, our story begins within the confines of Dr. Ho's laboratory and daycare, where he looks on as various disasters happen all over Japan.
And I know who's behind it. My 2 former laboratory associates, Bernie Tanaka and Mel Fujitsu. We had been the best of friends until a freakish lab accident disfigured their rugged good looks. They adopted the heavy metal persona and took to the center of the earth. To this day, they still blame me, but I ask you, who really knew about acid in those days?
Well, he uses a specialized team, the Dynaman, to combat the threat of this evil duo. Only 6 episodes were created for this spoof dub, and it first aired on USA Network's Night Flight segment. Some clips were also shown on Nickelodeon's Special Delivery. It's not really understood why this parody was shown on a program made for kids. The parody changed the series and told completely different stories using adult-oriented humor. Gratuitous use of racial stereotypes, the use of English, drug references, sexual innuendos, and random pop and rock music are the norm in this strange, if not offensive, series. There has been some speculation that this parody may have delayed the adaptation of Super Sentai to a Western audience.
The future of Sentai in Japan was continuing to thrive, and these series would implement what Toei had learned in their joint venture with Marvel. However, Sentai was still not gaining traction in the US, even with the Dynaman parody. This did very little to awaken public interest for a serious adaptation of the wildly successful Japanese counterpart. It wasn't until by chance Haim Saban discovered Bioman.
Hello, world. The computer boys and girls will be revolutionary.